So, at any time of day, you have anywhere from 4 to 8 officers, depending on what time it is and the overlapping of the shifts, plus our fire personnel. And it's not it's unusual, but our fire personnel, they are still sworn police officers, and occasionally they end up getting in the middle of a call also, and they turn into police officers at that time sometimes. So, but that's kind of how the shifts are broken down.
And we have a question here. There seems to be some people that drive high speeds on Southwest Boulevard around the street corners. They use them for, doing donuts and drifting and all of that. Is there a way to get more police presence in those hot spots? Do they just call public safety and kind of let you know, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So we have they can email our general email, and all those emails come to myself and command staff. They can call dispatch, and dispatch will pass it on. Because we have a kind of a traffic list, and when we get traffic complaints, it goes on that list and it goes directly to the traffic sergeant and traffic officer. In an effort to try to address some of the speed issues, and we actually just added another motor officer. He actually just completed his motor school just a short time ago. So we, over the last 3 weeks, month, we added an additional motor officer, and they have really been out there hitting it hard. And when they get those complaints, they go to that particular area. And then what that does is it pushes them to a different area. So then they move there. We kind of chase a little bit, but the traffic complaints and concerns, they don't fall on deaf ears. When we get them, we put people out. Our patrol officers, you'll see them sitting in different areas. What they're doing is we've asked them that when you're out in the field writing reports, go take a look at the traffic concerns areas and go write your reports in that area. So you're monitoring traffic. You're also deterring that kind of stuff. One of the things that we're having an issue with is the donuts, the people doing the donuts in the middle of intersections and in parking lots. We've had some success recently with that enforcement. And one of the reasons is because we are now taking their cars. So we have what's called a COPS team, community oriented policing team. It's a 3-member team. And one of the things that they are assigned right now is that reckless driving, that drifting or donuts. And so we've bought some equipment, and which is helping us to capture who's doing that. And then we can go after them at a later date. So, but please let us know, because you are our eyes and ears out there, and you know better than me where it's happening. So if it's happening in your neighborhood, let us know. I promise you we'll get out there.
Speaking of calling things in, there seems to be kind of a rash or a run in car break-ins. What can the public do just to kind of help deter that from happening?
Yeah, and that's a very perceptive. We have seen an increase in vehicle burgs and vehicle thefts. And we had a series a short time ago. We were able to make an arrest, and we were able to actually find victims that didn't even know they were victimized yet. What we're finding is with this stay-at-home order, this lockdown, this COVID we've been going through, there's a lot more people who are staying home, and they're not traveling like they normally did. And so they're not noticing the theft right off. And so, we would ask just make sure that you're checking your property and not leaving things in the car. Theft activity in general is up, and I don't know if it's because people are out of work. I don't know exactly what it is, but we are noticing an increase. I've always believed that crime is based on two things. It's based on intent, and opportunity. And there's not a lot that we can do about the intent. If someone is sitting in their living room and they decide they're going to get up and they're going to go out and steal, there's not much we can do about that thought they're putting, right? So the intent is on the criminal, all right? But opportunity, we absolutely have the ability to reduce the opportunity. And so if crime takes two things to happen, intent and opportunity, if you can get rid of the opportunity, maybe we can lower it. So I would encourage people to make sure they're not leaving valuables in sight in vehicles. The majority of vehicle thefts we're having right now, or thefts from vehicle, are actually from unlocked vehicles. They're not breaking windows. They're jiggling doors handles. They're walking through neighborhoods and they walk by, they jiggle the door handle. If it opens, boom, they're in. They're taking the money from the ashtray, the whatever they can grab quick, and they're gone. So lock your cars up. You know, I grew up in a time when you could leave your house unlocked and your car's unlocked. It's not that time anymore. So we got to lock our cars up and keep stuff out of sight. We had a unfortunate theft, you know, that came in last night. Day shift took it today, and the merchandise was on the front seat. It was in plain view, and it's not the fault of anybody, but if you can take the opportunity away, we can limit that. So, you know, keep your eyes open. When you hear something outside, don't think it's just the dog. Go look out the window. Good lighting around your place is really important. Any kind of motion cameras or motion lights you can put are really deterrents. And then just lock your cars and keep valuables out of them. That's what we're asking. And if you see someone is suspicious in your area, call us. That's what we do. We will come. Let us determine whether they belong there or not. We'll make that call.
All right, sounds good. Now, speaking of calls, what are the prevalent areas, or what do you guys get called on the most for?
Well, right, thefts. We spend a lot of time on theft related, and some of those are with many of those are shoplifting type stuff. More business retail type stuff. Domestic violence. What we call them 415 disturbances with domestic violence. We get a lot of that. We have so far this year and it's our numbers are a little down right now because COVID. It's keeping our numbers down a little bit. But even though we've already responded to right at 40,000 calls as of November 30th this year. So we're staying busy, but a good majority of those calls are thefts, burglaries. We are seeing an increase also in vehicle thefts. And most of those, again, are unlocked vehicles. And believe it or not, unlocked vehicles, some with the keys left accessible. But really that's the main thing. And they're split. When I pulled the numbers earlier, they're pretty much split with calls for service are definitely higher than proactive. But yeah, we responded to just right at 40,000 calls already this year, just as of the end of November.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that. That's a lot of calls. That seems like a lot of calls. Now, transitioning from something that is a little bit more serious to kind of something that just more violations or obnoxious or annoying. Is there any laws on the books about how many cars a person or a house can have parked on the street near their home? Or is it just they could park? Doesn't matter.
There's no law. And I guess I could go back to that last question and tell you that we get a lot of these calls. We get the calls that the neighbor parked in front of their house, or the neighbor across the street parks their car in front of their house. And I know these are frustrating for the homeowner, right? Because you kind of, when you go in, you buy a home, you kind of think that curtilage out in front of your house is kind of mine, right, for my cars. But there's no law preventing someone from parking in front of your house. There's no law that says how many cars someone can own. vehicles that can't be parked on the street, though, you can't park an unregistered vehicle on the street. There are some areas that there are weight limits for vehicles. You can't park vehicles over 10,000 pounds. That's to try to make our streets last longer. But there's nothing that says a family can't own 10 cars. I think what we see too is, and I think there's some of the new developments that they're building in here over in W section, K section. When you get these developments, you get a lot of new families moving in, right? So mom and dad and the 5-year-old and the 3-year-old move into a new house there, right? And that's kind of all through the subdivision. Mom has a car, dad has a car. And as that subdivision ages and those kids age, pretty soon, now that this 16-year-old's getting a car, and then 2 years later, this 16. So the subdivision just went from, 2-car households to 4-car households. And pretty soon, people are having to park out on RPX because there's nowhere to park in their subdivision. So that's kind of what I've seen over the years and why we have the parking problems. But as long as a vehicle is not blocking someone's driveway, preventing them from getting out, there's nothing that says they can't park anywhere on a public street that they would like.
Now, what if the car is extended, parked in such a way that it extends into the driveway?
Yeah, that's interesting, because if you read the vehicle code says you cannot block any part of the driveway. You cannot block people's ingress or egress from the driveway. But
so that's the slopes, right? That's the slopes. If it's sloped down, then you got to be outside of that.
Well, that technically that's what you would think the vehicle says, but a lot of what we do is based on case law, which means someone received a ticket for that, and then they appealed it, and at some point a high court came down and said, okay, that's really not the spirit of that law. The spirit of that law is you can't park in a manner that the person can't get their vehicle in or out. So if you've got 2 feet of your car sticking over their driveway, but there's still 12 feet of driveway, we don't have authority to cite or issue that car. But what we do have success in is going out and looking at the situation and going and talking to the person, and just talking about being a good neighbor, right, and a good steward of the neighborhood, and say, do you realize you're doing this? It is a problem. We're not going to take any action right now, but can you? And we find that generally when we have that conversation, it can solve the problem. So don't hesitate to call us on something like that. We'll go out, because we would rather have that conversation now than have a neighbor dispute issue that turns into something bigger later.
Right. And so what about like RVs and trailers? Are they are they off limits to the road as well, or are there any stipulations with those?
So one of the main things with parking on a public street is, and this is RVs or cars, you're not supposed to leave it there for more than 72 hours, and you have to move it. We are actually, this is a conversation that has come up in prior council meetings, and I know that us with code enforcement are working on new language for the parking of RVs and trailers and unattended trailers to try to address it. But if an RV is on the street or a trailer, it has to be moved every 72 hours. It can't just be parked and left. It has to be registered. But really those are the only tools we have right now to address them. So, it's unfortunate. RVing and camping and, using a trailer is something that people really enjoy, and it's recreation. But a lot of times people buy the RV or trailer, but they really don't have a storage plan for it, right? And not everybody wants to go buy a trailer and then have a monthly dollar amount they have to pay to store it somewhere. So, the storage, using the streets to store your camper or trailer is not the best way to do it. But until we get better language or a better way to address it, my only real avenue is a 72-hour parking or unregistered. If I might add real quick too, we do have, in addition to our patrol officers, we have community services officers. And that is one of the main things they do is they're throughout the community tagging, putting 72-hour notices on trailers and RVs. That's their job. And I know it seems like it should be easier, but Rohnert Park has a lot of streets. We have a lot of vehicles. I have 3 code enforcement officers or community service officers who work at that pretty much every day. And if we tag it and we go back in 72 hours and it's moved, then we have to start that process over. So sometimes it may look like we're not paying attention to it, but we don't always hang big red tags on them too. Sometimes it's kind of inconspicuous because we don't want people just moving at 1/10 of a mile every 2 days either. We want the problem solved. So, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I'm glad you added that. So over the last 9 months, we've experienced quite a bit of tumultuous times with COVID, with the defunding police movement and kind of the whole chaos that we've experienced, the political chaos, the elections, all of that taking place within the last 9 months. And so I think there's a few questions in regards to that. Specifically, how does the Rohnert Park Public Safety Department view the First Amendment? And how do you guys handle that in the midst of COVID restrictions and things like that?
Oh, absolutely. So the tough questions now, that's what you're telling me. So, when we come into this profession and we're hired, the first thing we do is we are sworn in and we take an oath to uphold not only the Constitution of the United States, but the Constitution of the state of California. And we take that oath seriously. And so, we believe in the First Amendment, and people have a right to free speech, to assembly. And we will do everything we can to protect people's rights to do that. When some of that, the defund police, the anti-police movement was kind of coming, we wanted to make sure that we provided a safe environment for people to voice their opinions. It was important that we do that, right? And because that's our job is to protect that right. I think I know where this is going, but we also have an obligation to enforce the laws, and so we try to enforce them fairly, but we do so while protecting the people's rights that they have. So the First Amendment, people have those rights, and we'll do everything to protect them as long as there's long as it doesn't create chaos and criminal behavior.
And in light of that, there's been a recent court case from the Supreme Court ruling in the state of New York regarding places of worship and faith, in that the governor could not shut those places of worship down. So how does that? I mean, obviously in California, there's the same guidelines and restrictions, having to meet outside. I think for most of California at this point being in purple. But how does that change anything? Does that change your perspective in regards to enforcing those guidelines and restrictions, knowing that the Supreme Court's kind of ruled in that way, or are you guys just continuing to enforce them according to the state constitution, or not the state constitution, but the state regulations and guidelines?
Good question there. So if I'm not mistaken, that was the New York Supreme Court that actually made that ruling.
No, it was actually the federal United States Supreme Court.
Okay. That was a New York case that went up, and it was actually, the complication there was prior to the ruling, the restriction had been lifted because New York had lifted some of their health orders. At this current minute, as we sit right here, that decision that was made by that court is not binding in California. Now, I do know that there is a entity in San Jose who is appealing their violation of that order. And I expect that to go up the course to the appellate court. And the appellate court of California may well take that ruling that came out of that court and apply it to California. And at that time, the way we enforce the health order in California could change based on that ruling. But right now, we are not under that case law. And so I can't enforce that. I still have to enforce the California state health order that we're under right now, the governor's order. And, you know, I'm curious to see where it goes. And I think that they, you know, the people taking that case forward have every right to do that. And if that is the new order, then we will absolutely switch directions and we will follow and we will go along with that order. Because that's what we do. We follow the law. And when the law changes, regardless of belief or philosophy, we follow that law. So like you, I'm sure I'm waiting to see where that goes, to see when it goes. Hopefully it'll be timely because the longer it sits out there, then there's a lot of what ifs. So I hope it happens soon.
And just to be clear, I'm not asking these questions. I mean, I have a vested interest, but I personally am not asking these questions. You and I, we've talked about it. So, but this next question kind of dovetails into it in that why are the casinos allowed to be open and people are allowed to be inside and even eating in the restaurants, but churches can't have indoor services?
So by the way the order is written, the casino is able to do what they're doing. I have not had to address that order or that issue with the casino because the casino sits outside my jurisdiction. So I don't have any jurisdictional authority over what the casino does. And they are a sovereign entity. And so they do have, there are some different guidelines for them. And it is tough because I get asked all the time, why don't I go out there and shut them down? And, you know, one, I don't have the authority to, and two, I don't have the legal jurisdiction to do anything. The casino, I will tell you, the casino is following the rules that they have to follow, though. They're not going outside the rules. They're following the rules that were given to them. And, you know, so I don't know why those decisions were made at a much higher level than I am. But they're within their right to do it. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that right now they're within their rights to do it.
So if there's any kind of crime out there at the casino, you guys aren't called to it. You guys don't handle that?
No, that's Sonoma County Sheriff's Department.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and then I guess, you know, the next question, you know, I asked about the First Amendment and the Rohnert Park Safety Department's view on the First Amendment. And so now I'm not going to go through all of the amendments, but what's the perspective on the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms?
You know, as I said earlier, our job is to protect the rights of the people. And, as long as they are bearing arms within the state statutes and following the law, I'm completely supportive of them. And I know the laws seem to change and get tougher all the time. It is gun laws are something that, we almost need a full-time person at the beginning of the year when the new laws come out to just decipher them and figure out where they're going and what's legal. But, I think everybody has that right who has the right. There are things you can do to get that right taken away, but that's on them. But if you have the right to own and carry a firearm, we will support that right, the whole way. One of the things that, people who want to carry and do it right can get a concealed weapons permit. And, they have to go through certain training and do it. So there's guidelines to doing it, but there are ways to do it right, and we'll support that 100%.
I imagine in the position that you're in, that you have opinions on all of these kind of situations. But because of the position you're in, you're kind of, you play neutral as far as sharing your opinion, because your role, your job, your responsibility, it doesn't really rely upon your opinion. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
You put that very, very nicely. Yeah, I think every individual has their own independent opinion of where we are with COVID right now, what some of the restrictions are, whether they're needed, is it fair? And I'm human just like everybody else, and of course I have my personal opinions of things, but when I took this job 30 plus years ago and I put this uniform on, I said that I would put my personal opinions aside and I would be led by the law and by fairness. And so that's what I do. And then, we talk about that all the time. And, our officers have a lot of discretion. But yeah, as I tell them, discretion is as wide as the goalpost. You have this much, but the goalposts are the laws. So you got to stay within that. So yeah, am I absolutely saddened by what is happening to our businesses and people who are losing their jobs, people who may possibly at some time lose their house because they've just gotten so far behind. It saddens me deeply to know that. And so we try to do everything we can to help, but when it comes down to, we follow the law and we try to be fair.
Well, thank you. I know that was kind of like a difficult section there of questions, but I appreciate you being candid and open and honest. I know that there's a lot that has been said kind of negatively towards police in general, but here in Rohnert Park, I know you've talked about and have wanted feedback as far as what kind of work you guys are doing, or what kind of feedback on it if there's situations that people feel have escalated too far, or something like that. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, and what kind of you're hoping maybe that some of these conversations that we're having with chat with the chief will kind of bring to the forefront?
Absolutely. So, a few years ago, if you remember the case in Missouri with Mr. Brown when he was shot, and there was kind of what's going on now started back then with the movement and the discussions on use of force and how police were doing their job. And I remember I was just coming in at that time as a new chief, and I remember supporters coming to me and say you don't have to listen, you guys are doing great, and I kept thinking to myself, but maybe we're not, maybe there's room for improvement, right? Maybe over the tens of years, hundreds of years that we've had law enforcement, maybe we got to a point where we stopped listening to the public and we started thinking that we were kind of our own entity and we were above it, right? And so I started kind of pushing back a little bit and say, no, maybe we can get better. We're not perfect. And so this right here, that, you know, now that it's come back around and we're having those same discussions, tells me that we really need to open up the communication, because we're only going to get better if we know exactly where we're making the mistakes. And COVID's been so hard, because to get out in the community and get these conversations going is difficult. And so the idea behind this is, you know, I'm hoping that people walk away from this first chat with a chief and with an idea that maybe we can open up a little bit. Maybe we can, you know, start trusting this person. And I got to earn that trust. You know, I got to get out in front, just like we're doing now, answer the questions, you know, and be honest with people. And I'm hoping that as we move through this, we can start having some of the more candid and tough discussions. But I know that's not going to help until I build trust with this community, and they know they can come on, and this is a safe forum to come on and do it, and that they can ask me things and we can have candid and honest conversations. Because although I believe that we do a great job overall, we can get better. And if there are people out in the community who don't think we're doing a good job, then that means we're missing something, and we've got to get better. It was important on this, and Jill, thank you so much for your work on this, and Lupe. It was important to make sure that we didn't create a situation where we start having conversations and we left out a part of the community, because, you know, that's part of what everyone's saying is there's parts of your community that are just disenfranchised. They don't have the same access to what everybody else has. And so, you know, to be able to have Lupe, you know, Lupe works in records. She's one of our awesome employees, and she's here tonight, staying here to provide translation so that we're not disenfranchising someone. But until I show the community and I show people who want to say something that they can trust me, it's going to take a while. So, yeah, it's important. We want to get better. If we're doing things out there that you know are upsetting people or they don't understand, let's have the conversation and let's fix it. Because you got a great public safety department here. You know, I was fortunate to come in here 2 years ago to some outstanding peoples, and you know, I wouldn't trade anybody in here for anyone. But we can always get better. And so, you know, if we can do even a better job, then let's do it. And that's only gonna happen if we can have these candid conversations and we can be honest.
Have you found over the last 9 months the morale of your officers and staff, has it declined? Has it stayed the same? You know, it's been tough for everyone, but you know, specifically with the police force and the police officers there, has the morale shifted in any way as there's been somewhat of an anti-police sentiment?
No, the last 9 months have been tough. I think I don't know what the term is now, COVID exhaustion, zoomed out, you know, whatever it would be. But I know that they're tired. You know, during this since March, we've been on numerous schedules, you know, and that's disruptive, right? When you're working day shift, you know, Monday through Friday, and I come and tell you, hey, in order to develop cohorts so that you guys aren't mixing, you got to go to a graveyard, you know, Thursday through Sunday. And so we've had, you know, 3 scheduled shifts. And you know, we've lost people because of we've been very fortunate that we haven't had a lot of positive tests, but every time we take somebody to jail and the jail calls us and says, hey, the person you brought in just tested positive, then we have to backtrack. And so any officers that were in, you know, in direct contact with that person, we have to get them tested. So we're going to put them off to get them tested, you know, and we've been fortunate. I mean, I think we're getting 95% negatives back because our officers are wearing masks and they're trying to do what they can. But so that creates overtime, right? That creates shift shortages. So officers are being held over, they're being called in on their days off. So that does take a toll. But the officers also, you know, when I talk, they also understand that they're fortunate because they're not going through some of the stuff that others are with loss of job. And plus, it seems like at least once a week, if not more, something happens that allows the officer to come in and talk about how they were able to help somebody who was struggling right now, right? I no names, but I've had officers who have gone somewhere and saw that someone had no food and went out and bought them groceries. We had one of our firefighters, our public safety officers, the other day, directly involved in the birth of a child. You know, so those things continually remind the officers why they got into this job, and then they tell the stories, and it reminds the ones that maybe weren't there that, hey, you know, your good story's coming, but that's why we're doing this. So as far as the you know, the national narrative, the defund the police, you know, we've had a lot of candid conversations at briefings about it, and you know, part of their concern, you know, has been, you know, with some of the bills going through that, you know, are some of the bills that the way they're written, are they going to put them in, you know, positions to where, you know, their life is even in more danger because, you know, just with use of force stuff. And then we talk about it, you know, we talk about if you're doing your job, if you're out there, you're doing your job right, you don't have to worry about it, right? And so, you know, we kind of have the ebb and flow of Congress, especially when the legislature gets in and a lot of bills are flying back and forth. But they've also seen that there's a lot of people who are advocating so that these bills come out in a fair manner. So yeah, you know, I think the morale is good here, especially for what we've been going through. But our officers, you know, it takes a toll on them too. So I definitely give them grace and try to help them through when they're having one of those little down ones.
And just a follow-up question to that, is there a preferred way for us as individuals in the community to show our appreciation and to show our support for the officers?
Absolutely. You know, we have, as long as I've been in this business, the communities have always been so great to officers, and you know, they're always getting gift cards for food or food dropped off here, and you know, then they got to spend extra time in the gym. But what I would say is because the officers they get taken care of pretty well. I think one of the things I appreciate most is when someone emails me or sends me a card or a letter telling me of a positive contact they had with one of my officers. And if it was negative, we have forms for that too. But you know, just letting me know and letting them know, because I pass all that down to them. So just acknowledgments of the job, because if someone wants to give to the officers or you know, give to the department for the officers, you know, what I would say is right now, especially with everybody hurting out there, take whatever you would give. If you were thinking about giving something financially or a donation, take whatever you would give and find an organization that feeds kids or feeds families or helps people turn the lights off, and just make that donation in a name, in the officer's name or in your name. But yeah, there's people out there that need that kind of support more than we do. We just like your kind words and letting us know that you appreciate us out there, and that the officer did a good job. Because honestly, I usually hear about the times that an officer upset somebody, but I don't always hear about the times that, they really did a good job. So they would appreciate that.
Excellent. Well, I want to be mindful of time, but there's one last question that has been asked, and it was kind of relating back to when you were talking about getting better as a safety department. And the question is, what is the department working on right now to improve? What are you guys doing to improve yourselves right now?
So one of the things we've done is we've really started going through our policies, and we've made several little changes. We've adopted some new policies. We're planning on increasing our training. COVID has us a little bit set back on that, because it's hard to schedule training right now because of all the restrictions. We're not exempt from that. We still have to follow the same guidelines. So trying to get groups of people together to train. But, one of the things we want to do is we understand that bias training is important. And it's so funny because I've always believed that I'm not a biased person, right? But that was basically with my own definition of what bias was, right? And I've been going through a few trainings recently to show that, and it really shows that everybody has biases. And I'm not saying that I've realized that I'm this biased person, but what I've realized is that we all have preconceived ideas of things and preconceived, technically biases. And so it's really helped instill in me that we really need to get that training out there and increase that training. The state has requirements. The state requires us to do bias training every 5 years. So, here as an agency, we've kind of come to the conclusion that that's just not enough, right? We got to keep it on the forefront. And so if we can keep that thought in the officer's mind about, well, what are your biases? What are your when you look at something, what do you see based on how you grew up and your beliefs, and keep that at the forefront. I think it'll really help us. So we're really wanting to increase our training in areas of, understanding diversity and diverse groups. We want to really increase our training for bias training and keeping that in the forefront. And right now we are going through our policies and working with them. As we already removed the carotid and from our policies, and we're still working on the language of that to make sure that the policy is strong and it's what's best for the community. So it's command staff, we meet weekly, and we're constantly addressing the national narrative. It is something we talk about every week.
Well, thank you very much for your time tonight. Again, I want to be mindful of we've gone a little over the hour, but for those that you've mentioned it, and I've mentioned it too, you're a pretty approachable guy. And how to contact you. Is there a way, if people have further questions and they want to talk to you directly and continue the conversation, is there a better way to contact you?
Absolutely. So I've always said I have an open door policy, and people can, especially, maybe not right now, but you can always come down and see me especially when COVID's over. You can call me. I'll always return your call. I don't run you through a chain of command before you get to the chief here. I'm accessible to you because I work for you. I'm your chief. And so you can call me. I don't know, Jill, if you can put my email address up there. My email bucket's going to fill up, I'm sure. But I will do the best I can to return everybody's email. And then there was a couple questions that have come through, I know, and I'm going to try to get those questions, and I will, if there's an email with it, I'll reach out to you and let you know, and we'll try to post some of the stuff on our Facebook and social media. so that we can get the answers that didn't get answered tonight. And then the other thing is as I said, this is the first of a series. The idea is to do this every first and third Tuesday, starting in January, and we'll get better at it. But I hope you'll join us. And Jill, were you going to put a quick survey up to see if people want to do this again? Because I certainly don't want to waste anybody's time. So I think Jill's she might be putting a survey up.
So actually, I don't have the final poll. The first one we kind of answered, and that kind of is sitting in the first spot. So right now, I think we can kind of just ask the audience if this is something that they would participate in the, once we hold more, and maybe respond via the chat. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Chief Mattis, and thank you, Jill. The next installment will have Pastor Randy Watson from Gateway. So it was a privilege to host the first one and to be a part of it. And I'm looking forward to continuing the relationship. And I actually love living in Rohnert Park, being in Rohnert Park, serving in Rohnert Park, and you guys make it, enjoyable, and so thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. And yeah, that's it from me. I don't know. Is that it? Do we just end the meeting, or how's this go?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Have a good night.